is December the 19th, 2011 in Salt Lake City. I'm re-recording the story of Encyclopedia Brown, Boy Detective, for Nathan. He's been staying with me for this past week, and I've enjoyed having him here. Anyway, we're going to re-record these stories. This story is entitled, The Case of the Knife in the Watermelon. Mr. Patch was the first grown-up to come to the Brown Detective Agency. He was carrying a watermelon. Mr. Patch owned a grocery store. He showed the watermelon to Encyclopedia. It had a knife buried in it up to the handle. "Find the boy who owns this knife," wrote Mr. Patch. "Look what he did." Encyclopedia looked at the watermelon. "Stabbing a watermelon isn't against the law," he pointed out. "I mean, it's not the same as stabbing a person." "The knife ended in my watermelon," Mr. Patch shouted. "It started in the window of my storeroom." "Someone used the knife to break into your storeroom and to open my money box," cried Mr. Patch. "How much was stolen?" asked Encyclopedia. "The thief didn't have time to take anything," said Mr. Patch in a calmer voice. "He heard me coming and he got scared. When he started to run, he tripped and fell. His knife plunged into this watermelon. He didn't have time to pull it out." "Did you see his face?" Mr. Patch shook his head. "No, but I did see he had the letter L on the back of his jacket." "That means he's a lion, a member of the Boys Club of Woodburn Avenue," said Encyclopedia. "That's a real lead." The private detective stepped closer to the watermelon. The knife had plunged into it so deeply that only the carved wood handle showed above the green skin. Mr. Patch laid a quarter on the gasoline can. "Find the owner of this knife, quick." "I'm sorry," replied Encyclopedia, thinking he would have to charge for expenses on this case. "I'll need a little more time. I have to buy a fingerprint kit. Then I have to dust the handle of the knife and—" "There are no fingerprints," said Mr. Patch heavily. "I wiped them off." You wiped them off," said Encyclopedia weakly. Mr. Patch explained. "My cat knocked a bag of flour off a shelf. It broke and spilled over the watermelon and knife. I wiped off the floor and the fingerprints too." Encyclopedia clasped his head and moaned. Then he looked up. "Still, the thief doesn't know that you wiped off the fingerprints." Encyclopedia took out his handkerchief. He wrapped it carefully around the handle of the knife. "That does it," he said. "That makes it look as though we have fingerprints we are trying to save. The thief may try to wipe them off and give himself away. We'll have to watch all the lions. Let's go." Encyclopedia got into Mr. Patch's truck. They drove over to Woodburn Avenue. 4 lions, John, Frank, Corky, and Buster, were outside the club, looking on the engine of an old black car. Although few in number, the lions were all big boys, bigger than Bugs and Minnie, but Mr. Patch was bigger than any of them. He had strong hands and big arms, so the lions listened when Encyclopedia spoke. "Do you see this watermelon?" he asked. "Now I take off the handkerchief. There, what do you see?" "The handle," said Buster. "Of a knife," said Corky. "Very interesting," said John. "Well, so what?" said Frank. "The knife," said Encyclopedia, "was used in an attempt to rob Mr. Patch's store." "The knife," said Buster. "Doesn't belong," said Corky. "To any," said John. "Of us," said Frank. "Maybe not, but the police will probably take your fingerprints," said Encyclopedia. "If the guilty boy steps forward now, Mr. Patch will ask the police not to be too hard on him." The lions looked serious. Mr. Patch looked serious. The only boy detective in the state looked serious. But that was all. "It's not working the way you planned," Mr. Patch said in a whisper. "None of them has tried to wipe the handle off of the knife." Encyclopedia nodded. "Leave the knife in the watermelon just as it is. Don't touch it," he whispered back. To the lions, he said, "The police will break up your club if they find one of you is a thief." The lions stopped looking serious. They looked scared. Suddenly John said softly, "Frank owns a knife like that." "A lot of fellows own knives with carved handles," retorted Frank. "Cut it out." "You showed me yours yesterday," John shot back. "You even tried to get me to hold it. Why, my fingerprints might be on that handle." "It's not the same knife," said Frank, "so quit worrying." "I lost my knife last month," Buster said. "Everyone knows I did." "Where's your knife, Corky?" "I lost mine too," said Corky. "This one couldn't be my knife anyway. Mine has a blade a half-inch longer." None of the lions remembered what the other knives really looked like. They began to argue loudly. Each boy tried to put himself in the clear. "Too bad," muttered Mr. Patch. "They are scared and fighting among themselves, but none of them has touched the knife to try to get rid of the fingerprints. Your plan didn't work." "Yes, it did," said Encyclopedia. "I know whose knife it is." How did he know whose knife it was? The solution to the case of a knife in the watermelon. As Mr. Patch said, none of the lions touched the knife, so the blade was buried in the watermelon all the time the lions were looking at it. In other words, none of the lions could see how long the blade of the knife was. But Corky said his knife had a blade that was half an inch longer than the one in the watermelon. That was his mistake. He could not have known how long the blade was unless he had seen it before. The knife belonged to Corky. Were you able to solve the mystery about who put the knife in the watermelon? Anyway, here is another chance of you to solve another mystery. It's called the case of the missing roller skates. Between 9 and 9:30 on Tuesday morning, Sally Kimball's roller skates disappeared from the waiting room in Dr. Vivian Wilson's office. And where was Encyclopedia Brown, boy detective? He was not 10 feet away from the scene of the crime. He was sitting in the chair, with his eyes shut and his mouth open wide. In a way, he had an excuse. Dr. Wilson was pulling one of Encyclopedia's teeth. "There," said Dr. Wilson. He said it cheerfully, as if he were handing Encyclopedia an ice cream cone instead of a tooth. "Ugh," said Encyclopedia. Dr. Wilson said, "All right, hop down from the chair." Encyclopedia hopped down and put the tooth in his pocket. He was going to give it to Charlie Stewart, who collected teeth and kept them in a floured cookie jar. Encyclopedia went into the waiting room. The chair on which he had left Sally's roller skates was empty. He looked behind the chair. He dropped to his knees and looked under the chair. "The skates, they're gone," he exclaimed. "Are you sure you brought them with you?" asked Dr. Wilson. "I'm sure," answered Encyclopedia. "They were broken. I fixed them last night for my partner, Sally Kimball. I was going to take them over to her house on my way home from your office." Dr. Wilson shook his head sadly. "I'm afraid you'll never get them back." But Dr. Wilson knew nothing about detective work. Encyclopedia liked the dentist, though he felt that Vivian was a better first name for a woman than a man. "I'll find the skates," said the boy detective. He spoke with certainty, but he felt no such thing. What if what he felt was the blow to his pride? It hurt worse than his jaw. Imagine a detective being robbed. In the corridor outside Dr. Wilson's office, Encyclopedia leaned against the wall. He closed his eyes and did some deep thinking. Dr. Wilson's office was on the ground floor of the new medical building. The building had 3 floors and 15 offices. All the offices were used by doctors or dentists. What if the thief had followed him into the building in order to steal the skates? Then the case was closed, because I could spend the rest of my life looking through closets, school lockers, and garages all over Idaville, the Encyclopedia thought. But suppose the thief had simply come into the building to see a doctor. Suppose on his way in he had noticed a boy carrying a pair of roller skates. Well, that was something else. The encyclopedia reasoned further. The thief could be a grown-up, a boy or a girl. He ruled out a grown-up. First, because it was unlikely that a grown-up would steal a pair of small skates. Second, because a grown-up would be too hard to catch. Too many men and women went in and out of the medical building every hour. I'll have to act on the idea that the thief is a boy or a girl, he decided. It's a long chance, but the only one I have. He opened his eyes. The case called for plain, old-fashioned police legwork. The encyclopedia began on the ground floor. He asked the same question in every office. Were any boys or girls here to see the doctor this morning? The answer was the same in every office. No. Things looked hopeless, but on the top floor he finally got a lead. The nurse in room 301 told him a boy named Billy Haggerty had been there this morning to have a sprained wrist treated. The encyclopedia asked in the last two offices just to be sure, but neither doctor had treated children this morning. Billy Haggerty became suspect number one. The encyclopedia got Billy Haggerty's address from the nurse in room 301. He hurried back to Dr. Wilson's office to use the telephone. He called Sally. He told her to meet him in front of the Haggerty's house in half an hour. We may have some rough going ahead of us, he warned. But Billy Haggerty turned out to be only an inch taller than Encyclopedia and shorter than Sally. Billy drew himself up to his full height at Encyclopedia's first question. Were you in Dr. Vivian Wilson's office this morning? Nah, snapped Billy. I don't know any Dr. Wilson. You didn't ask anyone about Dr. Wilson? Put in Sally. I never heard of him before you spoke his name, said Billy. Then you went straight to your own doctor on the third floor, said Encyclopedia? Yeah, Dr. Stanton in room 301. What's it to you? Dr. Wilson's office is down the hall from both the stairs and the elevator, said Encyclopedia thoughtfully. You wouldn't pass his office going up or coming down. I don't know where his office is, and I don't care, said Billy. It's none of your business where I was. We just want to be sure you weren't in Dr. Vivian Wilson's office this morning, that's all, said Sally. Well, I wasn't. I had a sprained wrist, not a toothache. So why should I go near his office, demanded Billy. Don't like snoopers. What are you after? A pair of roller skates, said Encyclopedia. Do you mind returning them? You've given yourself away. What gave Billy away? Now think on it. Well, he said he'd never been there. What do you think it was? Let's read the answer. Okay, here's the solution to the case of the missing roller skates. Billy Haggerty said that he had never heard of Dr. Vivian Wilson and that he didn't know where his office was. But he knew too much about him. He knew that Dr. Vivian Wilson was, first, a man, not a woman, and, second, a dentist, not a doctor. When he was tripped by his bibs, Billy returned the roller skates to Sally. Oh, golly, I didn't even think of that. Okay, the next one. The case of the champion egg spinner. What is an egg spinner? Let's find out. Mr. O'Hara made the biggest and best chocolate ice cream sodas in Idaville. He used a double helping of ice cream in each and every one. Encyclopedia went to Mr. O'Hara's drugstore on hot afternoons. When the detective business began to pay off, he went there on cool afternoons, too. But he never thought he would one day solve the case sitting at Mr. O'Hara's soda fountain. People who sat at Mr. O'Hara's counter often ordered a soft drink or ice cream. Sometimes they ordered both. Nobody ever brought his own food. But one Sunday, a boy about 12 years old came into the drugstore carrying an egg. He put it on Mr. O'Hara's counter. The Encyclopedia was surprised. He had finished his soda, but he sat and watched the boy with the egg. He was even more surprised when the boy spun the egg on the counter. Still practicing? Mr. O'Hara asked the boy. The boy smiled as he owned the whole world. Just keeping my touch. I've got a big match tomorrow. He gave the egg another spin. He's good, that Encyclopedia. He really knows how to spin an egg to keep it going. The boy ordered a chocolate soda with a triple helping of ice cream. That cost 10 cents extra. Mr. O'Hara made the soda. He placed it before the boy. He did not see the egg spinning toward the glass till it was too late. The egg knocked against the glass and spun away. It dropped out of sight on Mr. O'Hara's side of the counter. Mr. O'Hara looked down. "That's the end of your egg. I'm sorry." "Forget it," said the boy with a grand wave of his hand. "I have to use another egg in the spinning match tomorrow anyway." "I better sweep up the mess," said Mr. O'Hara, and so he walked to the back of the drugstore. Encyclopedia left 25 cents on the counter to pay for his soda. As he went out the door, he saw Mr. O'Hara returning with a broom and a dustpan. Encyclopedia rode home slowly on his bicycle. He stopped to look at the stuffed mountain lion Mr. Ekstrom, the taxidermist, had just put in the window of his shop. The boy detective was in no hurry. It was Sunday, and the Brown Detective Agency was closed. As he turned the corner on Rover Avenue, he saw that something was up. Bicycles were parked on the lawn in front of his house. Just about the whole gang was waiting for him at the garage. He made out Jody and Billy Turner, Charlie Stewart, Herb Stein, Pinky Plummer, and Sally. They looked as happy as 6 flat tires. Sally greeted him. "The boys need your help," she said. "With what?" "With Eddie Felon," said Charlie Stewart. "His egg beats everything." "Who is Eddie Felon?" asked Encyclopedia. "A human egg beater?" "Stop being silly," said Sally. "Eddie is the champion egg spinner," explained Pinky. "He keeps his eggs spinning longer than anyone else's." "The boys think he does something secret and unfair to win," said Sally. "Ah, you fear foul play," asked Encyclopedia. "Be serious," cried Sally. "Eddie won everything in the last match. Pinky's glove, Jody's hat, Charlie's hockey stick, Billy's magic set, and Herb's jackknife." "There's another match tomorrow," said Jody. "Eddie's out to win Charlie's tooth collection. And I just got 2 zebra teeth," glowed Charlie. "Mr. Extra gave them to me for delivering Mr. Webster's stuffed sailfish Friday." Said the Encyclopedia. "I've never heard of an egg spinning contest before. Who thought it up?" "Eddie," said the 5 boys together. "I might have known," said Encyclopedia. "The boys have been practicing for days," said Sally, "but Eddie will walk off with Charlie's tooth collection just the same." "And everything else," said Billy. "This case smells rotten," said Encyclopedia. "Where do you get the eggs?" "At the supermarket," answered Pinky. "All of us go together." "How do you know that? No, the egg Eddie got at the supermarket will be the one he uses tomorrow." "Each boy picks an egg," said Pinky. "He marks it with a pencil and gives his egg to another boy. That way we know no one can change an egg before the match." "Who marked Eddie's egg?" asked Encyclopedia. "I did," said Charlie. "I made a double X on it." "Tomorrow you'll have to signal for me," said Encyclopedia, "before you start spinning. If the egg is the one you marked, raise 1 finger. If it isn't the one, raise 2 fingers. Got it?" "Yeah, got it," said Charlie. "Now where and when does the match take place?" "Behind the school at 9 in the morning," said Jody. "I'll be there," said Encyclopedia, starting into the house. The boys and Sally felt let down. They had expected Encyclopedia to solve this case right away. "Oh, stop worrying," Encyclopedia called to them. "I have a pretty good idea why Eddie always wins." The next morning when Encyclopedia reached the schoolyard, Sally rushed to meet him. She was breathless. "I thought you wouldn't get here in time," she said. "I couldn't find one of my sneakers," the boy detective said, looking around him. Sure enough, Eddie the champion was the boy he had seen in the drugstore. "The case of the champion egg spinner is cracked," Encyclopedia said mysteriously. Eddie was smiling as he fingered the flowered cookie jar that held Charlie's collection of teeth. Against the teeth, Eddie was putting up a football uniform. It was a better prize than 53 teeth. Pinky's used science kit, Jody's rubber boots, Billy's fishing pole, and even Herb's old telescope. The match is going to start, Sally told Encyclopedia. Charlie and Eddie got down on their knees. The spinning field was a smooth marble slab under the statue of Thomas Edison. Each boy handed the other his egg. Eddie hardly glanced at Charlie, but Charlie peered at the champion's egg a long time. He turned it over slowly, then he held up one finger. Eddie hadn't changed eggs. He was using the one Charlie had marked. Ready? Asked Eddie, smiling. Do something fast, Sally whispered to Encyclopedia. Get set, Eddie called. Excuse me, said Encyclopedia. Is this a contest of skill alone? Huh? Said Eddie. Why, of course. Then you won't mind changing eggs, said Encyclopedia. Let Charlie have your egg, and you take his. The boy who spins his egg the longest wins the match. Eddie's smile disappeared as fast as pancakes at Sunday breakfast. His hand closed quickly over his egg. Are you saying someone is cheating? He demanded. Not that it's any of your business, but Charlie knows this is my egg. It's the same one he marked. Of course it's the same egg, said Encyclopedia, but with one big difference that nobody can see. What was the difference? Oh my, I didn't catch that one. Here's the solution to the case of the champion egg spinner. Listen carefully and see if you've got it figured out. Mr. O'Hara had given Encyclopedia the clue to the mystery. Remember how Eddie's egg had fallen off the counter onto the floor? What had Mr. O'Hara said? Not, I'd better clean up the mess. He said I'd better sweep up the mess. He had not fetched a towel or mop. He had fetched a broom and a dustpan. This told Encyclopedia the egg had broken into pieces. He realized that the egg was a hard-boiled one, and a hard-boiled egg will spin longer than an uncooked egg every time. Eddie had to use another uncooked egg against Charlie, and he lost the match. Charlie agreed to give back Eddie's football uniform if he would return the prizes he had won at the earlier matches. The ex-champion returned the prizes. Well, we learn something every day if we're reading books, so keep reading. Love you lots, Grandma.